Hey guys, welcome to the secret history living inside your aquarium. How's it going, guys? As always, we'll wait for folks to filter in. If you're watching this later on replay, maybe just skip in 5 minutes or something like that, because it usually takes folks just a little while to find that the live stream is up and all that jazz. Hey, fake name, how's it going? How is it up in Canada, sir? I apologize ahead of time if I'm talking funny. As you can see, I had a bunch of surgery on my lip, so I've got this enormous lip that makes it a little hard to talk. Monster Man 2120, hello from Trinidad and Tobago. Tobago? What do you prefer, Tobago or Tobago? Tomato, tomato. But awesome islands, by the way. I would love to go there. Tetra Keeper, welcome. Also, the unofficial sponsor of this live cast, Dr. Pepper. They're not paying me, but they should be. So, Modern Mark, hello, welcome. I see people are trickling in now, so let's get to it. So, what I'm going to be talking about today is the strict design concept or idea of Iwagumi aquascaping and the principles involved. Now, if you're like me, you probably won't fall in love with Iwagumi specifically, but rather maybe some of the core ideas, um, maybe some of the the design aesthetics are really familiar to you guys. If anybody here is an artist like myself, or a fashion designer, an architect, anything like that, you'll be familiar with some of this stuff. A photographer also. James Glenn, welcome. Adonia Strongman, hello again. Welcome. So, in Animal Lover number one, I'm so glad you made it. I was hoping you'd catch this live cast since you said you were wanting to. So let's jump right in. So Iwagumi aquascaping, what is that? Well, it is a style of aquascaping that originated in Japan. It originated in northern Japan, and it's not an aquascape, a fish tank style originally. It is a gardening style. So along with, I guess, bonsai and Zen stone gardens and things like that, it's a specific type of stone gardening where the stones are what you worry about more than the plants. You set up a hardscape, if you will, or a landscape with stones, big stones, little stones, all the way down, and you place those strategically from wherever the viewpoints in the garden are going to be, and then you plant your plants accordingly to that. So it really, Iwagumi is a region in Japan, but it also translates now loosely, like in slang for art, kind of. It would be like we say pop art is a genre. I mean, it would be loosely stone stone art or something like that, stone gardening. I would love oh, Monster Man says, would love for you to come and do a lecture. I would love to come to Trinidad and Tobago. If you have someone who wants to hear something down there, I also want to go to the U.S. Virgin Islands, go meet J.H. Aquatics, do all that. Also, yeah, somebody just mentioned a disappearing waterfall. So all of that stuff is worked in around a basis of what Iwagumi aquascaping is. And so today what I'm going to start out with is the real basics, and some of this stuff is so easy. I promise you could do it yourself. You can get a 5-year-old kid to do it. But to master it, to really become adept at it, where you feel it in your gut, your instinct of what needs to go where, that can take a lifetime. So that is something you need to understand before we get into all of this about Japanese arts, traditions and practices is that they, as a culture, continually break things down to their core elements. It's a fundamental way of thinking that they have adopted, especially as an island nation being cut off from a lot of the world for the last 500 years until the last 150. Before that, it was almost 800 years that they didn't have meaningful trade or contact with those on the outside. So they really developed this beautiful and unique style that is a little different from everywhere else, yet you'll see it incorporates some of the same uh, styles and same principles that we have. So they don't have the idea of the rule of thirds, which we do. I'll talk about that in a moment. They don't have the idea of the golden spiral or the golden ratio, which is a Greco-Roman, probably before that even Sumerian or Egyptian belief based on proportions and ratios all around. There's a spiral link to it. I've done a video on that. If you want to check out proportions and ratios in aquascaping, go back and check out those videos. I draw right onto the tank. There's one where I have a broken bridge, Iwagumi style layout. And basically, Iwagumi is reference to the hardscape. So Iwagumi is as simple as 3 rocks. You need at least 3, but beyond that you can have any amount as long as it's in odd numbers. So you can have 3, 5 is really common, 9 is really common, 7's common, 15 common also. But prime numbers are definitely going to be your I guess they're sacred numbers to them. Whether it's a prime number of stones or whether it's a prime number of plants that you put in, or a prime number of inches or centimeters, millimeters apart from different stones when you're looking at it. Those ratios of 1/3, 2/3, a whole, those ratios are very important to them, and they happen to be the same ones that are in the aesthetic in many other cultures, including Navajo, Celtic, and Nazca lines down in Peru with the Incan culture, Nazca being prior to the Incan culture. So there's these basic things that humans seem to be drawn to. Odd numbers. Humans, when you look at us, our face is symmetrical. We actually think people are more beautiful when they're symmetrical. If they're not, maybe there's something wrong genetically, or maybe they're injured. And evolutionarily, they say the brain is wired to like symmetry. Now, that's to a point. We like symmetry 99.9% of the time, but then we want something a little off. Because if you've ever taken a picture of yourself in a mirror and then just reflected it, or seen pictures of people like that, most humans know that something's off because nobody's 100% symmetrical. And so the Japanese like to have also that notion of beauty comes from imperfection also. And so you always have something that's slightly off. And I think that's a really cool concept. It also gives you a little more wiggle room to fudge around and say, "Hey, I'm being an artist and I am doing traditional art." Thanks, guys, for clicking the like button, by the way. Otter Creek, welcome. Tetra Keeper, Aqua Balls, all you guys, welcome. If I miss your name, I'm sorry. We're just going to jump into this. Also, let me say really quickly, before I start showing you guys the diagrams and stones and things, I know some people have expressed that they do not want to be a part of Patreon anymore. Now, Patreon censored essentially YouTube, Patreon, Twitter. There's been a lot of censoring of people who are alt-right, whether or not you believe that they're alt-right or they're extreme or you just think that they're normal people. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is they've censored some people in certain ways, and it doesn't seem to be consistent always. It seems like some far left, like anarchists and stuff have also gotten that. So it seems like they're taking the quote unquote extremes, which maybe in this day and age with the internet aren't as extreme as people would think. More people have these beliefs than you would believe in the first place. But they basically have deplatformed people, and now Patreon has done the same. And Patreon is also just kind of weird in the way they divvy up money and how long it takes. So I don't want to get into all of that. You guys can look on that. There's a million people ranting and raving about it. But I respect that, whether you're right wing, left wing, or you don't give a hoot about politics, whether you're in the center, whatever. But I see why people are doing that, and I hear you. And if you would still like to support me or the channel, please contact me and just message me, because hopefully I didn't make the cutoff for Aquashella due to all the surgeries and things I've been having, but I will be trying to go to the aquatic experience. I will be at the Aquatic Gardener Association meeting. I just also received my master's uh, in aquatic gardening certificates, so I've gone up the steps in learning through that through my local club who follows the Aquatic Gardeners Association. And so beyond things like hosting workshops, I'll be doing one. If you're listening, here's a little plug. In the Seattle area, I'll be announcing dates coming up soon when I'll be doing an Iwagumi specific aquascaping presentation where you'll get materials, get to play with them, and even take them home if you'd like. So just thought I'd throw all that out there. But these things, whether it's certifications, whether it's getting stuff to show you guys on film, or whether it's traveling places and filming things and getting microphones for interviews, costs money. And so I really appreciate you guys for the super chats, for the Patreon, however you guys have done it. I appreciate it, and I understand if you want to do it through PayPal or Google Chat or tie it to a pigeon and send it to me. Whatever makes you comfortable, I appreciate it. So I just wanted to get that all out of the way. Heather Nielsen, hello. Nizzy the One, hello. Um, I will be hoping to come around the US a little bit more, and I'm also announcing I am coming to the Tampa Bay area, and I will be there. Uh, what is it? April 25th through May 7th or 8th, and so I hope to be checking out some aquarium growing places. Sorry guys if it looks gross, if I've got stuff in the corner of my mouth. As I said, I had gum grafts and surgery down on my jawbone here, so it's kind of hard to talk and my lips all hanging out, all bruised. So sorry. uh, but let's get back into aquascaping. I just wanted to throw all that news out there into the world while I had you guys here. If you live in the aquascape, or if you live in the Tampa area and you're into aquascaping, you're into plants, freshwater fish, I also want to go catch some cichlids and some fish like that out in the wild that have escaped from the fish farms down there. They are everywhere. It is crazy what you can catch down there. It's where my wife lived there for years, and so we have friends down there, and it should be fun. So let's get into this a little heavier, a little more heady, if you will. And let's flip this around, stop focusing on me, and look at the diagram. Because you know when the diagrams come out, it's party time. Alright guys, so we've got Iwagumi 101. So, Iwagumi, as I said, it is a predominantly stone-based aquascape and art. This box, I hope you guys can have some imagination with me. It is your aquarium. Oftentimes, this is a rimless aquarium, ADA style with the glass lily pipe coming in, not a big hang off the back. Very simplistic, and it's on a plain pedestal without any doors or drawers. Now, that is the fuddy-duddy rich ideal, but for me, I've done these that way. I've done them on the fly with, $10 or $1 a gallon tank sale tanks, And either way, you can make something really beautiful and interesting because your fish are going to react differently to a layout like this versus one that's just super jungly and hidden. This way, your fish probably aren't going to be breeding too much, but they will be moving around a lot more. They may school more. This is more about minimalism, I guess, if you will. So, in Iwagumi, you want to start with your center stone, your keystone, your Owaishi. I've heard it pronounced several ways. All these words are pronounced in the north one way, in Tokyo one way, and then by British and European aquascapes teachers and store owners another way. So if I say it wrong, I apologize. But Uwaishi is your largest stone. Now this stone, if you see, uh, I broke up the tank roughly into thirds. So there's a third here, 2/3, and a hole up here. Boom, boom, boom. So your center stone, according to so I don't have to say it every time. According to the fundamentals of Iwagumi School of Gardening, and that's what we're going by because these are true in all ways until we start talking about tilt and flow. Because tilt and flow are what make it different from the gardening. And I'll just say this now that when you have a stone that is supposed to look natural and underwater, it will be in a river or a lake. And stones are usually found in rivers because then the sediment hasn't filled up. And most of the art in Japan takes a lot from looking at nature and studying patterns and what is pleasing about a sunset, what is pleasing about a snag of a tree that's fallen over and has moss on it, and trying to break that down into its core elements and then rebuild them into something human. So when you look at it, you always want to have the main stone, and it is, oh, hey, wet sleeves, welcome, and you're not too late. We're just getting into the meat and potatoes. So when you have your main stone, also called the keystone, the kingstone, the father stone, it will be in the center in this picture, but it does not need to be in the center. It can either be in the center or it can be anywhere where it touches on this or this. So you can have or this or this. And you want it to be as tall, if not a little taller, than 2/3 of the tank. And you can also start this line if you want. It depends on who you ask. There's one school that says you start the line at your substrate, and there's another that says no, you break up the whole thing, and if you have substrate that fills up the glass an inch, you start it there. But this is all, rules are meant to be broken. You're going to learn the rules so that you know how to break them properly, as I always say. But so say that this keystone, the father stone, the Owaishi, it is in a river. And that's why the stones are exposed. Otherwise, there'd be silt and there'd be grass if it were in a lake. So it's in a river. We're talking freshwater aquariums here. And over time, it gets shifted. Not even, we're not even talking about the geological processes and things like that, but we're talking about in the river. However it was uncovered or placed in the river, if it fell down from somewhere, over time usually you'll feel a force of flow. So in this tank, the flow is coming this way. And you can see that the stone is slightly tilted that way. This stone, same thing. And then this one is creating tension by going the other way. So in this art, there's harmony and there's tension. And we're going to get into that in a little more detail, but let me finish talking about the three main important stones. And then this is a 5-stone configuration. If you can tell, that's a stone, that's a stone. This is one stone, this is another stone, and this is another stone. Okay, so the second stone is your fukuishi stone, and it is the second tallest stone. Now, I like to put my stones somewhere together, or do 2 on one side and then maybe the second biggest one here. But these two stones do not need to be linked in any other way other than this stone is lower than this stone is lower than the top third line, and this stone is at or above it. This stone is generally a little wider. That doesn't need to be the case though. So in this 5 stone layout, this stone is just doing its own thing. The only way it needs to be related is they need to be the same type of stone. So if you're using granite, you're using granite. So I literally is there a chart in English? Totally. You don't even need to worry about this, okay? I just put this up for now. You can Google it, but these are just, for all you care, these are just made up words. They don't translate to words other than words made up for this hobby. So, they're regions in Japan with ishi on it, basically. So the third stone is always going to enforce the height of the first stone. So your Soeishi stone is always going to either be touching or close to your first stone, your tall stone, and your tall stone is the one you want to scrutinize and think about the most. Whether you place it over here and then you put that third tallest stone here, and then this the second tallest stone can be on its own here with maybe 2 teeny stones next to it. No, as long as it's an odd number, it can be anywhere as long as this top stone is crossing this top part and the second stone is noticeably shorter, which gives height to this stone. It shows you that, oh, we have a mountain range. Oh, we have a pillar. These are both tall. Everything other than that is just going to reinforce this. So this stone, the third biggest stone, is next to the biggest stone, and it's usually made out of the same type of material, same exact color of stone. And what you can do here is play with tension. So in this case, since this stone is reinforcing this one, you can kind of see I scribbled some grains on the stone. So pretend there were lines on the stone that gave it a flow. When this stone is placed, it's slightly tilted, and your eye's going to go boop. Your eye, when you work with the rule of thirds, and just psychologically they've proven this, your eye is going to go somewhere in this middle box. So when you touch these intersections with your main composition, it's sure to draw the eye around. And in the West, we tend to go doot, doot, doot when we're looking at stuff, scan that way, because we read right to left. But, other cultures, they read it doot, doot, and it's just kind of a different, however you learn to read and write, it can change that scanning method, but it will still be in this core area. And balance is also important. So for ease of the concept, this one is balanced just boom, right in this center third. And the height of the whole thing, there's a teeny bit here and a ton here. So balance works in 2 ways in Iwagumi. First way is nothingness, or like yin and yang, kind of like that. And so you can have an open space or white space here and then an earthy space here. So you're going to want almost all of it taken up by plants, earth, stone, and then some nothingness. And then here you want it ideally maybe half taken up. And that is a balanced, how do I do that to show you guys? Balanced, in quotation marks, tank. Now you can also do a triangular composition where the tank comes up this way and the one big stone's up here and the little stones are here, and it's all weighted this way. So in any case, let's talk about the last stone before we move on. This last stone is called the sacrificial stone, the throwaway stone, which I love this concept. So you really only need 3 stones in Iwagumi. You have the biggest stone, the secondary stone, which is cool, but not as cool on purpose as this one. You want this one to feel dynamic, to have breaks in it, to have grain, cast shadows, things like that. Like have it interesting to the eye, because you're not covering up this stone in this style of aquascaping traditionally. You are letting this stone be a monolith to itself. It is the art itself, not the plants, not the fish. So any plants that you place next to it, in theory, are going to be to reinforce the height. And this third stone, the Soeishi stone, that is so that this stone still looks big. So as you can see, the Soeishi looks like it tilted and fell over more. So it's giving the flow, the feeling, if I drew an arrow from here to here, whoops, then you would see that there's motion in it. And all these scapes need motion. Whereas this stone goes this way. So you kind of have a flow that your eye will read going clockwise like this into here, and then all of a sudden it'll come down from below and notice another one, kind of hinting at the same start point. So when you have this layout, you definitely want to have, as somebody mentioned, schooling fish. The smaller the fish, the better, because this could be a 5 or a 10-gallon tank. And so it's all about making this stone feel impressive, feel heavy, feel important. And so that's why you see, let's take a break from the chart for a minute. This tank over here started as a Iwagumi tank, if you remember way back. It was a corner at stone tank. So underneath all this, there's actually the father stone here, if you want it in English. Then there's the secondary stone and the third stone. So I kept them all clumped up there. But we also have, so that sacrificial stone and the number 3 stone, you can actually have as many of those two types as you'd like, because it's really those 2 stones and then 1 small one by the big one that's touching or right at the base of it to give it size and perspective. That's all the function of those stones are. The rest should be lower. They're not your apex. They're not your mountain. And so, yeah, and I apologize that the sun is shining right on this tank right now. But I want you guys to see these are all really classic fish that you could use in an Iwagumi scape. And it's because here I've got a 17-gallon tank, not a huge tank, and I've got like 40 fish in here, which I don't recommend unless you've got a ton of plants in it. And in an Iwagumi tank, you're not going to have a ton of plants, like biomass wise, which makes it a little trickier with algae to some people. It just kind of depends on what you end up doing with the planting. So in this tank, though, shrimp are also great. So same with the Iwagumi. They really give size and perspective. You know, a mono shrimp typically have been the favored shrimp in the layouts. But, you know, Taiwan bees, any sort of shrimp, in traditional aquascaping in Japan, they really, whether it's ADA nature like Takashi Amano started, or the Iwagumi style of scaping, it is under the ideas that you're mimicking nature, that everything kind of flows together, and you don't want your shrimp to stand out like bright red shrimp. That's not the idea of the Japanese tank. However, in the West, we kind of like a little more contrast. Just the grain of the stones isn't necessarily enough contrast for us. It's not, we don't have that Zen composition in our mind as being complex. To us, that means they did less work or they added less color. So basically, like these are one of my favorite fish in the world. And I wish let's see, can I block the light? Yeah, there we go. I'll block a little bit of the light. But these are called Somfongsi rasboras. They're similar to lamb chop rasboras, SB rasboras, whatever you want to call them. But they have a gasoline shimmer on them. Also, these axelrodi green or blue rasboras are great fish because when you startle them, I guess I don't startle them anymore because I feed them. But they tend to shoal at least. They may not always school, but they shoal. They travel in groups. And if they didn't have all this plant material to hide behind, they would stay even tighter. So in an Iwagumi scape, they're going to kind of circle that scape and go back and forth depending on the dimensions of your scape. And then for the shrimp, you could go with like Malawa shrimp or a mono shrimp. I love Malawa shrimp, these little guys, because they turn colors, they have babies quickly, and they eat a ton of algae. So they're right now they're on algae duty. So I haven't been pulling algae in this tank because right now I'm done with the aquascape contest stress, and I'm just letting my shrimp have an algae buffet 24/7 right now. But these little guys get the same size as Neocaridina. They're super easy to take care of, and that's why I really like them. If you want, you can go against the traditional style, and you can always go with Neocaridina like I do. I don't have an Iwagumi scape in my house because to me, every inch of tank space, every gallon, I want to fill with stone or something beautiful. And so let me show you another example of what I would not be doing for an Iwagumi scape. So you see these two types of stone. There's this stone here and this stone. That's kind of a no-no in Iwagumi style scapes. Even in like a river scape or something, that's just not how it goes. You could now this here would be very common in an Iwagumi scape where you have a stone and you're allowing moss to naturally grow on it. You've got Bucephalandra flowering on it. That's why I've got the intense light on it right now. I'm trying to flower up some of it for some videos and projects I'm working on. This came from Hontron at honaquatics.com. There's a link, 15% off any of his stuff in the description below in the doobly-doo if you guys are looking for anything. Also right now, another plant that I'm digging on while we're over here is this Loganandra, I never say it right, Miboldi pink, which is the European version of pink. You guys can't see it in this silly... Okay, there you go. You see that pink and the bronze? For some reason, when I film it, it does not show up straightforward. The LED must mess with the camera's live stream capabilities. This is also blood reddish with some purple. And this is pink. So, sorry guys, you're not seeing the true colors. But in an Iwagumi scape, you can use wood, but a by the book, steadfast, true Iwagumi scape, you would not be using wood. You'd actually just have stone. And that throwaway stone, that fourth stone, it's a stone that you can actually have plants growing over, and that does not matter. So that's kind of interesting to me that sacrificial stone is designed to be grown over. Yes, exactly. James Glenn, chili rasboras are great. Even small guppies will work, the males, if you just did males. If you want something more flashy, the natural wild type guppies, males, also popular choice in American Iwagumi. And, neon tetras are also always going to be popular. Another great one, if you have a larger style tank, is the Algae Eater, aka Flying Fox, the Siamese Algae Eater. Don't get the Chinese one, they're mean. These Ember Tetras are also an excellent choice. They are used in traditional Iwagumi tanks. They have a bright yellow, a nice ability to school together, but they're a little more laid back, so they don't school as heavy unless you put someone a little more aggressive in with them. So it's kind of the idea of like the opposite of a dither fish. To get your fish in an Iwagumi tank to move around, you don't want them to just be happy, as much as I hate to say it. You want them to have the false fear of another fish. So you don't want a fish that's going to tear them up, but even just like an algae eater would be enough in an open tank where that algae eater is going to cruise around and the fish will just stay out of his way usually. Or some Danios. Danios look great. Even the small tin winnies are great. CO2. So actually this tank has only had CO2 on it for 5 days. right now. So most of this is not CO2 induced. Most of this is just fertilizer, a ton of filtration, a ton of water changes, and then I've been using uh, ADA, Brighty K, so the potassium and stuff. I've been actually injecting with a syringe all the way into little cracks and crevices, vitamins, minerals. That, you know, that leaf needs to be cut off. But actually, like the black hair algae that was on there and stuff, I actually use a syringe with a needle on it and everything. That specific with hydrogen peroxide, and I will take that hydrogen peroxide and let's see if we can find a spot of it. Most of it's gone now, but oh, there we go. So if you saw this growing, I would actually take that needle and put the tip there and there. Then it'll turn orange, and then the fish will come eat it. So that is something you should actually know. This is totally relevant to Iwagumi scaping, is that your scape will likely get algae at some point. Bulbitis is a very popular choice of plants. Now, in Iwagumi recently, the last 15 years, there's been a big change in that people are creating dioramas. And when I say this, I mean that both of these tanks, if you look at them, this is not trying to fool anyone with a miniature bonsai tree or anything like that going on. This is just an aquascape that is kind of jungly, a little Dutch with all the layers of things, but it's just a nature tank. And I really just wanted to emphasize that, you know, this one, these stones, before they had algae, they all had just great angular features and banding. So you could see how they were formed. And when I was talking about flow, part of that is, so you can see the rock cleavage, see those scrapes on the rock, how they were formed, how they broke. And you can go by, there's Sirius stone back there that has those bands. And that's really good if you're new to this and you can't quite read where the stone was. You can always take this band here and start with that top, pretend this was your keystone if we were in a little tank here. Then if another stone has some banding, you could tilt it a little more, and that would be your 1 and 3 stone. And then you could do another stone here with the banding at a complete opposite angle, and that would be tension. So let's get back over here to the drawing for a minute. Sorry, this is a little ghetto, but I have some sketches of various aquascapes where we're just going to go through and see which is the father stone, the keystone, the second stone, and then the third stone, which is helping that main stone. So this, by the way, don't look at it too much. Don't worry about it. It's just the top view of this. I know that's kind of more confusing for several people I've talked to. You see this in this display, it's all here. All the weights right in the center. Up to that 2/3 of the tank line in height. And this also has, if you couldn't tell, this actually has substrate that builds up as you go in the tank. So it starts short, and by the back of the tank, it's like this tall. So, all right. Yes, flamingo crypts are great. You do not need CO2 for them. I will show you in a moment, actually, my non-CO2 crypts. They actually seem to do better for me. I have very low TDS water, and I do not need CO2 at all for my crypts. I actually need the opposite. They melt in my CO2 and highlight tanks for some reason. That might just be me, but that's what I've experienced. So, number one, it's up right by that 1/3 line. Number two, it's actually assisting. So this is a pretty straight up stone. If you can see here, I indicated a little bit of banding. So it is tilted, not the stone itself, but the grain of the stone shows that that's tilted, because a tilt is all subjective, you know, because who's to say what is upright for a stone? I mean, there's a geological answer to that, but as far as when you look at a stone, what's up and down, it's a little tricky to say for sure. This stone, far away from it, the number 2 stone, the fukuishi stone is far away. It also gives a little cave, a little bit more dynamic tension. You can see that here we've kind of got a V configuration to the substrate rather than the exact opposite of the substrate being built up in the center, and that actually balances out the same. So here, again, the bottom third has almost all of the stuff, the weight. The middle third has maybe half or a third of the weight, and the top has almost nothing in it. But the fish tie that all together, the shrimp tie that all together. Water flow would be different in this. You'd see that it would swirl through here. So that kind of you can play with the eye and that. Um, so first stone, second stone, again, third stone. It is there to show because we get that this is a big stone too. These are both big stones. They're like almost in competition because this one's set farther back in the display. Third stone is helping to emphasize the first stone. Alan, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, buddy. You have done so much for this channel by financially supporting videos and things like that, and I really, really do appreciate that. Thank you, my friend. I'm sure we'll talk soon. So, uh, are the plants all supposed to be low growing? Well, that's a great question. So, yes, typically in Iwagumi scapes, you would say that the rocks are the stars and your 3 stones, no matter what, stay showing. Like over 3/4 of the stone has to be visible, or it's just not an Iwagumi tank. Uh, so the rocks, as Alan pointed out, rather than stones, what you're going to be doing is planting. And if you guys Google Iwagumi, Iwagumi, you'll see other layouts like this. But people are starting to bend the rules quite a bit. I clearly bend the rules because I like to have a bunch of stuff in my tanks because I don't have a lot of room. And I'd like to have a bunch of species and a bunch of plants in every tank. So, yes, in this tank, you'd have something like Cuban, like baby tears, dwarf baby tears. You'd have something like little hair grass or chain sword grass, chain swords, cryptokerns, Anubias, petite nana, bulbitis that you keep trimmed, moss set up to look like ferns, or just kind of starting at the base of the stones. But there's no driftwood technically in Iwagumi. But that being said, the new style for the last 15 years, which is really when the art form has come into its own, has started to use just that. And that's typically something that's similar to a bonsai or bonsai, uh, you know, piece of hardware. And for this, I believe that wherever the wood starts, now not all scapers believe this. Some say that it's the top of the wood, but you don't want it to be taller than the first stone. And you can have it something equal to the second stone if it's a big piece. If it's little pieces, just do whatever feels like it's reinforcing the wood. But here, you could do some sort of false tree or whatever, but you've automatically ruined the effect that this is a mountain. So you're not doing a cinematic landscape in miniature where everything's teeny around this stone to make it look massive like some people do, which is traditional Iwagumi. You are now entering a realm of a nature tank, which is totally fine. This is how I like to do my tanks. And you can then maybe do, in a tank like this, maybe the entire background has plants like Rotala or Ludwigia, something that fills up, or Vallisneria, like corkscrew Vallisneria or something like that, that actually fills up that background so there's nothing there. But in a traditional Iwagumi tank, you want air, you want it to be light. You need the yin and the yang of busy, crowded bottom and light flowing top where you can almost like feel the breeze and see through the tank each way. To me, I think you can have a happy medium and still follow some of these traditional uh, rules that are in Iwagumi. So here I would say the primary stone's there, secondary stone is obviously there, it's taller than this stone, and then your third stone, even though this stone's lower and you could argue this is the third, and it gets muddled, it's the fact that your feature, your main wood or whatnot is coming out of there, that gives it more bulk, more weight. And it could even arguably be your number two stone. And in that case, it doesn't need to reinforce this stone at all. But because I left the number three over here, not reinforcing the height, not showing scale, my number four now plays the role that a traditional number three would. So the number three is no longer making the big one look even bigger by being small in the same direction. Now it is showing that this is upright. Over time, it's showing time and erosion, and to convey time and flow in your tank is something you'll learn with years of experience. It's something you will spend a lifetime trying to master in a lot of Asian arts. There's a Japanese term or philosophy that really briefly wabi sabi, which is like wabi kusa, is a type of where you take a stone and you put moss on it and you have plants growing out of it, whatever. You can look up wabi kusa, but wabi sabi is more like chaos. So it's like beautiful broken nature chaos, and so their idea would be to take this big king stone and to smash it on the ground, bash it up into little pieces that are fractured, and then reassemble that in the tank so that maybe this is cleavage right off the side of this rock, and this came from right here, and then the little pebbles that you would put in would fall there. Now, a great person to check out the work of is obviously Takashi Amano if you haven't. But he did something in 1986, which he deemed a method of his, where he would take rocks like pebbles and sand. So say you have soil, like aqua soil here, you would then take something, either like if you feel like the rock has a missing piece here or has a lot of bulk here and this chunk missing here, maybe for instance, you would take your hand without any stone, without any water in the tank, this is all done dry, you would take your hand and put a handful of stone right here and just dump it in the tank, and it falls where it falls, and that's going to fill up the cracks and crevices naturally, just like if it had fallen off this as a mountain. And when you're starting to do that technique, or maybe you even just have your hand this high right next to it here and you drop it and things just trickle down, it will give a natural effect, and it will have a randomness that only nature can create. If you try to place every little pebble and stone that's going in besides your main stones, it will probably end up looking forced more often than not. So last one I want to show you guys here real quick. We got the one here, the two here, three here. Hey Mary, welcome. And then the three, again, it's touching, in this case, the one stone. There's no tilt or anything here. This was just the simplest layout, even more simple than the first drawing we went with. And then what I wanted to show you is that really these three stones are all that are important. Is we've got the tall stone, another stone that denotes that this is a mountain range or this is pillars, and then the three, I mean, it could be very small. At that point, the names change. So you ignore 4 and 5, and this would be the Kansan type of Iwagumi or Sansan, and it is just a 3-stone arrangement instead of 5 or 9 or 7 or 12 or whatever. 12's a bad, I don't know why I said 12, 13. But yeah, it just shows it being low, it being stone. Maybe the shadows are on the same side. So maybe your light's up here and this has a shadow here and this has shadows in here. You can also link stones that way. So it's not just the texture of the stones, it's the interplay with light. And sometimes that takes your tank being set up for a while and you staring at it and being like, man, that just doesn't look right, or I want to tie this all together a little better. So I want to show you guys right now, before I hop downstairs and show you some more plants you could use, answer some questions. And this is just an overview. I could spend an hour talking about any one of these principles, but this is literally my last Iwagumi tank right here. So this was my keystone, my pillar stone. This is all quartzite and granite from the Olympic mountain range in Washington State. And this was my keystone. This was my main stone. This was my secondary stone right in here. And then, or no, actually this was my secondary stone set up. Let me get these ones out of the way. I would set them up, but it's too much work. I don't want to drop things. And then my third stone was this ledge type stone, and it was set up something like this. So it actually curved, I guess the curve's here, and I fit it together like something like this, with this stone off a ways up in the background, so it was tall. And this just reinforced the weight of that stone. And then below it, I had in the foreground this lovely piece and this little piece mostly buried. So they all kind of look like shark fins or pillars that had just come jutting out of the ground. And to me, I really like this scape. These stones are incredibly heavy, though. They're really rich in iron. Enough so that I never had to add iron to my tank in the 2 years that these were in the tank. But another thing is watching how the stones evolve. So you'll see when a stone is new or hasn't been in an aquarium, it may have sparkles and texture. Here you can see nearite snails laid eggs, and they accentuate the areas they can reach. They couldn't get in those cracks, but they laid right up to the edge of them. So there's some kind of funky stuff that goes on. Up here, you can see that there was some sort of algae that grew in there. This actually was, sorry guys, it keeps thinking I'm rotating my phone. So this was a red hue that was not there. So this is all from algae pulling it out of the rocks, which is really cool. So it stained the rocks over a couple years. And they also have this kind of matte, but a little bit like coal look. But even on a stone like this, you've got your facets, which are, you know, your angular shapes, and then you've got your grains. So here you can see, if you look carefully, that this stone was laid down over time. If this is the earth, this is a cross section of the earth here, it was laid down. This is the top of the stone. But you don't need to use it that way. The top of the stone is subjective, as I said. You can turn it this way. And maybe the stone was turned when it formed, you know? Maybe there's several ways that you can see cleavage. Sometimes you get a band this way and a band that way, and that's because there was maybe an earthquake or something, and the stone formed in two resting positions at the same time. So here you can see there's like some green texture and stuff, but you can also see that pieces have broken off. This stone has character by not being super smooth. I mean, look at the top of that stone, what I used as the top. It's got these layers, so you know that when it formed, those little slots were laid down like layers. Otherwise, it wouldn't break off in cleavage in this angle. So reading that as you get older, you'll just be older by default as you've been doing it longer. So older than when you start. So let's go downstairs. Let me take one more look through my little sketchbook, because like I said, I'm doing an aquascaping. So I guess this is helpful maybe. So here you've got the rock principle down if you're watching by now. One note is that now if you're going to be using wood, you want a flow that is swirly and organic, like water, like life that moves and flows, whereas earth is angular. So earth, you want your angles to be, upright this way. Like you want to be able to draw an angle straight, no matter what, you could have a straight line and that would indicate your angle. You could put an arrow on the end of it, and you could feel that that rock was either being pushed into the ground or pulled out of the ground at that angle with the way it looked. Like this one is like, oh, it looks like it's straight into the ground. Now with wood, you'd want to plant moss and plants like kind of climbing around it. You can still have moss all on one side because that's the way it'll grow. If you don't actually seed the stick or the driftwood in your tank, then it'll grow naturally anyways. It may take a year or two, but it will just start growing. And so yet again, here we have the flow. And so pretend that the cleavage and the way the stone was laid down. Pretend that all the stones were laid down like this one. So they all were laid down that way. But somehow they end up like this through continental drift, through ice ages, whatever it may be. So when you want to show flow, you'd have all your stones going this way. So it doesn't matter which way the cleavage went, but this one's the same, this one's the same, this one's the same. And then if you want to create tension, you have one that all the sudden is going the complete opposite way. But if you transition into that zone so that this one's striped this way a little bit more and then a little bit more, you're creating a curved direction slowly. Or it would be an arrow going up this way, an arrow going here, an arrow going here, and an arrow going here, and then straight down eventually. Now, that would be considered harmony or like a natural landscape. You could do a miniature landscape with that. You could do miniature trees and things with that. But if you're just going to do an aquarium scape, then you can do whatever you want. You can create. All right, guys, sorry about that. I'm back now. Apologize for that. Everyone's getting home from work in my neighborhood right now, and Wi-Fi is going to crash. So if you lose me again, auf Wiedersehen, farewell, adieu. You can sing the song. But yeah, so here's some basic, as we were saying, yin and yang, ways to balance the tank. You can do different color sand too, like a white sand, a dark sand, an aqua soil. And up in these areas, it's totally fine to take like a little pot or a piece of cut plastic from a soda bottle and wedge that in so your slope doesn't slide down. So you kind of make walls and then you just disguise it with plants. So totally hide your mistakes with plants. But this picture is basically there's another belief in Iwagumi that your eye will scan a certain way. In Japanese culture, they believe the eye scans in a triangle. So, but as I was saying, so you plant on your wood if you're including it, which is not typically Iwagumi, but it has become that. It might as well be because as it's become popular, that has become a mainstay of it. Also making the little tiny bonsai trees. But rocks, you want to have more specific angles. Like here, I was saying, these are going all different ways. They don't make any sense. It was clear that someone just dumped them there, and that's that. Here, it would be like a totally surreal tank where you've got right angles, and maybe you have a huge plant that outdoes the stones, and so that doesn't. It's not an Iwagumi tank anymore, but it is something you see out there, and it's art. It's art. It's ecology. It's fun. So I'm not knocking anyone for it. I'm just saying it's not Iwagumi. Also, you can have the triangular format. If you're using a cube, these are all the common scape shapes. So you've got the V, you've got the hill or the island that gets higher towards the back of the tank. You've got like to give it depth, you can make a false trail that zigzags and gets skinnier towards the back. It starts wide and then goes in between ridges. And that takes a lot of, you have to care for it well. You have to put in false, or not false, but you have to put in little shunts to keep the rock from eroding, and or the aqua soil from eroding. And then down here, it's also light versus dark taken to another level, which is sand, and then maybe they'd have coarse pebbles here, and aqua soil here, and sand here. Another one would be to have the natural uplift from like a violent subduction zone earthquake. So study mountains. Look at the things around you that are not created by man. Let's see if we can see them tonight. Yes, we can. So as I'm signing off, I want to thank everybody for joining me. But these mountains, they kind of have a tall point, and they kind of have these shapes that the sand in Iwagumi tends to have, you know, like this up on this side and a plant over here and then the stones here. I mean, if you look at that, there's inspiration everywhere. If we go outside again, oh yeah, I'll show you the flamingo crypt too. So again, well, I guess you can't see it, but over here, V shape. So you see boom, boom, and then bounce in the center. It's everywhere. Everywhere you look, you will see it. So I just wish I could see that view from in the house. I have to go outside where it's cold. Wah, wah. All right. So I wanted to show off to the guy growing crypts, flamingo crypts, or who wants to be. And I'm sorry if I lose you guys. As I said, everybody's getting home and getting on Wi-Fi, and with just takes a dip. All right, let's put the lights on. So in this tank, this was an Iwagumi style tank when it was young. If you find me on Instagram, you'll see that there's a skeleton to it. Now it's a jungle tank. So you can check that out. Here's elephant stone, by the way, just something interesting. But right here, here's crypt. This is pink crypt, even if you can't make out that it's a bright pink color. Everything looks green because of the duckweed in this, but it eats up my ammonia really well, so that's fine. This is really popular, so Erio Vietnam type stuff, small rotalas, small crypts, lutias, wendaddies, moss balls you can tear apart and actually start little algae fur looking tufts. This is Valsenaria growing back here. You can get that to take over the whole back of it. Here we've got gold coin Anubias. You can kind of see the gold to it. It's like more of a bronzy gold. Here we got all my shrimp chilling. We got some pregnant ones I'm separating here just to count how many babies they have. But this tank has a lot of great stuff in it that I'll be pulling from for the workshop. But here is Christmas moss, and then we've got little Java ferns. These are great for the tank. You can see we're part of the same algae that is on the pump here on the sponge filter is actually growing out of the side of that stone. That's why that textured stone is so great, is all the angles and stuff. Now this isn't scaped per se. I'm always getting in and out of this tank to get out fish to sell or trade. And then, you know, shrimp also, as Tetra Keeper says, is you can always put shrimp in your tank. And I also recommend little Corridora habrosis and stuff like that. Elephant stone I got at Aquarium Zen. I think Han Aquatics also carries it, and there's a discount code for him. And Aquatic Arts, both of them have carried it from time to time. And this gnarly wood, this wood is pretty cool. And then the wet spot also carries it. And all of those Flip Aquatics, for a little while, he sent me this stone here, this blue elephant stone stuff. And this is one I just found because I like it. It has an X on it. It feels like a pirate chest made out of natural rock. What is the name of the plant that has the leaves that are covered in holes? It's not in the tank you're showing now. It's in the... with the name of the plant that has leaves. Oh, Madagascar lace is what that's called. It is a... I thought I had some up here. Maybe I moved it all. Is there any back there? No. It lives in a bulb. It grows out of bulbs, and it's an Aponigeton. So it's like Aponigeton Madagascar, I think is what it's called. I'm just shooting from the hip on that one. But another good fish you could use in a stone tank would be Dario. These little Batis, Scarlet Batis. That would be a cool one. And as far as your 5-gallon, oh no, my nearite snail flipped upside down, and I've lost several nearite snails. Once they get big, they don't flip themselves over well. So just saved its life, as silly as that maneuver was. But yeah, so totally not a good example of an Iwagumi scape. But I just wanted to show you guys all that. We're going to run back upstairs real quick. Maybe you can see the pink a little bit better. This has no CO2, not even any fertilizer, but it does have a lot of plants. It doesn't have a big light or anything. The light is just a cheapo, I think it's a Finnex Stingray or something. So yeah, low light in this tank. Yeah, all the ferns and the Anubias and all that kind of stuff's growing great. The Naja grass or the guppy grass, whatever you want to call it's great. If you have low light, Rotala is great. It grows real dense and teeny like that. And sometimes it'll get spindly and long, but if you keep cutting it, it'll stay low. What is my favorite tank? It's constantly changing, honestly, but I would say my favorite tank, and I'm gonna lose you guys, so I want to wish you a good night. Also, your 5-gallon, talk to people online. They've got tons of great stocking ideas. I may have even done a video on what to stock in your nano tank, but my favorite tank is probably this one in the long term, just because it's always got the rarest plants in it, like little clippings, and then when they get healthy enough, I split them amongst the 40-gallon with the big manzanita, and then this one. And this one also has all my plecos in it. Well, not all, but it has a sampling of every species of pleco. Here again is that Aponigeton Madagascar, aka Madagascar lace. And it also grows crinum and onion plant are in its family also. They're all from Madagascar, and they're really kind of alien looking plants. I should do a video on them. But there we have it. You guys stuck with me. I hope you're having a great evening and you're doing well. Message me if you have any more questions. Drop a comment on the video. And if you have something to add or correct or whatnot, yeah, check out the comments. And also, if you want to get a hold of me to help contribute towards the travels and filming and stuff, just drop me a comment. I'll try to find it. Drop me another one if I don't see that for some reason. Or hit me up on Facebook. I'll be around. You can get a hold of me. All right, guys. Have a great evening. Enjoy nature, whether it's snowing, raining, or whatever. And enjoy each other. Take care. Have a great night. I'm going to go ice my lip now. Thanks again for those who help with the GoFundMe to get the bone and skin graft for my broken jaw, too. Oh, now I'm foaming at the mouth. All right, guys. Take care. No gross stuff. I won't show that off. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.